The Rwandan refugee crisis began in April 1994 in the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide, which resulted in the deaths of an estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus. The genocide was carried out by the Hutu majority government and its allied militias. The Tutsi-led Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, defeated the Hutu government in July 1994, and many Hutus fled the country out of fear of reprisals. The refugee crisis was a result of the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Rwandans who fled the violence and chaos in their country. The refugees, most of whom were Hutu, sought refuge in neighboring countries, including Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. The largest number of refugees, estimated at 1.2 million, fled to Tanzania. The refugees faced a number of challenges, including limited access to food, clean water, and medical care. Many were traumatized by the violence they had experienced or witnessed, and they struggled to cope with their displacement and uncertainty about their future. The international response to the refugee crisis was slow and inadequate. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, struggled to provide basic assistance to the refugees, and many of the camps were overcrowded and unsanitary. The international community was hesitant to provide funding for the crisis, and there were concerns about the security situation in the region. The refugee crisis also had significant political implications. The Hutu refugees were accused of being responsible for the genocide, and there were concerns that they would regroup and launch attacks on the new Tutsi-led government in Rwanda. The refugee camps were seen as potential breeding grounds for militias and extremist groups. The situation was further complicated by the involvement of the DRC, which was experiencing its own civil war at the time. The DRC government provided support to the Hutu refugees, including weapons and training, and the refugee camps became a base for attacks on Rwanda. The Rwandan government, under the leadership of President Paul Kagame, was determined to repatriate the refugees and to bring stability to the region. The government initiated a program of national reconciliation and worked to improve the security situation in the country. The government also established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address the legacy of the genocide and to promote healing and forgiveness. In 1996, the Rwandan Patriotic Army, RPA, launched a military campaign against the Hutu militias in the refugee camps in eastern Zaire, now the DRC. The campaign, known as Operation Restore Order, was aimed at dismantling the Hutu militias and repatriating the refugees. The operation was successful in breaking up the refugee camps and scattering the militias, but it also resulted in significant casualties and displacement. The operation led to the creation of a number of new refugee camps in the DRC, and it contributed to the ongoing instability in the region. The international community responded with a number of humanitarian aid efforts, but the crisis persisted for many years. In 2000, the UNHCR launched a major repatriation program aimed at returning Rwandan refugees to their homes. The program was largely successful, and by 2002, the majority of the refugees had returned to Rwanda. The Rwandan refugee crisis highlighted the need for effective humanitarian assistance in times of crisis, as well as the importance of addressing the root causes of conflict. The crisis also underscored the challenges of managing large-scale refugee populations, particularly in areas with limited resources and infrastructure. The crisis had significant implications for the stability of the region, and it contributed to ongoing conflicts and instability in the DRC. The crisis also had a lasting impact on the people of Rwanda, many of whom were traumatized by the violence and displacement they experienced. The crisis exposed deep-seated ethnic tensions in Rwanda and the region, and it highlighted the need for sustained efforts to promote national reconciliation and peace-building. The Rwandan refugee crisis also had significant implications for the international community. The crisis challenged the ability of the UN and other international organizations to respond effectively to complex humanitarian emergencies. It also raised questions about the role of regional organizations in managing crises in Africa and the responsibility of the international community to protect vulnerable populations. The crisis also highlighted the need for a more comprehensive approach to conflict prevention and resolution in Africa. The conflict in Rwanda was the result of a complex web of political, economic, and social factors, including poverty, inequality, and historical grievances. Addressing these root causes is essential to prevent future crises and promote long-term stability in the region. The legacy of the Rwandan refugee crisis is still felt today, more than 2 decades later. The crisis contributed to ongoing conflicts in the DRC and other parts of the region, and it had a lasting impact on the lives of the refugees and their families. The crisis also underscores the need for continued efforts to promote peace, stability, and reconciliation in Africa, and to ensure that vulnerable populations receive the support they need during times of crisis.